Welcome to the How of Business with your host, Henry Lopez, the podcast that helps you start, run, and grow your small business. And now, here is your host.
Welcome to this episode of the How of Business podcast. This is Henry Lopez, and this episode is about the 5 reasons your small business will fail. If you're thinking about starting a small business or are already running a small business, this episode is going to walk you through 5 common reasons that small businesses fail. And it's based on what I've seen over the years of coaching small business owners and my own experiences as a small business owner. More importantly, I'll share how to avoid these mistakes and give your business the best chance to succeed. You can find all the How of Business resources, including the show notes page for this episode, and learn more about my one-on-one and group coaching programs at thehowofbusiness.com. I also invite you to consider supporting this podcast on Patreon, and please subscribe wherever you might be listening so you don't miss any new episodes. Here are the 5 reasons your small business will fail. These are not in any particular order, although I think number 1 is probably most critical, and that is a lack of a clear business model. Many founders confuse a good idea or something they're passionate about with a business model, and so they have the tendency to jump in without knowing if it'll make any consistent money. So the mistake is skipping the process of defining exactly how you will create, deliver, and capture value. So to have a chance to be successful, a business model must allow for sufficient profitability and it must be scalable. So that lack of a clear and to some extent proven business model is one of the primary reasons your small business will fail. Now, I dive into this deeply in episode 532. Episode 532 is Your Business Model Broken? And in this episode, I explain how to spot when your model is broken and how to avoid getting there and what you can do to fix it, including real-world signs like consistently low margins and customer confusion about what it is that you offer. So the key here is to use a plan, even if it's a simple 1-page business model canvas, so that you can launch ideally as niche down or scaled down as possible. Test it, get some validation on that MVP, and then grow from there. I know that's not possible for every business type, but if possible, you want to start small, prove the business model, and then grow over time. And then, most critically, be willing to adjust, pivot, or perhaps completely abandon a bad business model. And I'll talk more about this in point number 5, or reason number 5, why your small business will fail. Reason number 2 why your small business will fail has all to do with cash flow management. So poor cash flow management will kill your business. Cash is the lifeblood of your small business, and most small businesses don't die from a lack of profit necessarily. They die from a lack of cash, although the two are combined, of course. You either didn't create a realistic financial projection, or maybe were overly optimistic on how fast you'd get to break even. And then that leads to a surprise in your capital needs. You don't have enough working capital. And the number one thing that kills a small business is running out of cash. So you might see businesses, for example, that seem very busy, but busy doesn't always translate to profitable. Busy doesn't always translate to a type of business that requires, let's say, upfront investment in inventory, or a type of business model where you deliver a service and get paid later. So those things tend to exacerbate cash flow issues. That combined again with poor planning or being overly optimistic as to how much working capital you need to get to break even, and that leads to the crisis of running out of cash, or always being strapped for cash because of those peaks and valleys, and then you can never grow from there. You get stuck there. So in episode 439, I talk about this point of cash flow management, and I walk you through how to create and manage a simple cash flow forecast to keep you on top of what your forecast is for cash and give you enough time, hopefully, to respond and plan. That runway initially that you have that needs to get you to break even, and then even beyond that to get you to where you are making enough profits to compensate yourself, that is what gets severely underestimated. We run out of cash, and that will kill your business. So build a conservative and tested and validated business model, including the financial projections, and plan for at least 50% more than you think you need in the way of working capital, or where that additional capital will come from in case the business needs it, in case it takes a little longer than you anticipated to get to profitability. Reason number 3, your small business will fail is not enough customers. That's pretty obvious, but weak demand for your product, which usually is tied to weak marketing and sales. So a great product or service is worthless if nobody knows about it. So we've got to get the word out. We've got to go find those buyers typically with most business models. And I have found that sometimes people are delusional and thinking, well, we'll just put up a website and people will find us. But that's rarely the case. We're a needle in the haystack. We must invest in marketing and sales, depending on the type of business that you're in, to get people to know about and see the value in what we have to offer. If you're relying exclusively on word of mouth or hoping that somebody will find you online, your business is likely going to fail. The other thing is to niche down. Don't try to be all things to all people. Focus on a narrow niche, which is your ideal target client, and refine your offer and your selling messages for that particular segment or person or avatar. You'll expand beyond that later once you've established that clientele. I talk more about this in episode 351, Niche Down to Scale Up. And I share why focusing on a specific target market helps you build momentum so that then you can continue to refine that messaging and scale by being focused. You're not going to out Walmart or out Amazon those businesses. We simply don't have the resources. We must stay narrowly focused. Even if we think of Amazon as an example, what did they start with? They started with books exclusively and then grew to offer everything now. So that's the idea. Niche down to scale up. And we must get the word out through marketing and sales. As I always like to say, except for perhaps in an online, true e-commerce online business, the business is out there, not in here. We've got to get out there into that community to sell and promote and let people know that we are here. So start small, niche down, 1 or 2 marketing channels at most, with a clear, targeted, ideal client or avatar. Reason number 4 why your small business will fail is you're trying to do everything yourself. So you're wearing all of the hats, which of course is very common and necessary for a lot of us if we're starting a very small business with limited resources. And in fact, there's goodness to that, to understanding exactly how every part of your business works. And it's going to work for you initially, perhaps depending on the scale of your business. But not only are you going to reach burnout, you're also going to hit a ceiling as far as ability to scale. And you're going to hit that ceiling pretty quickly. Now, if all you want to do is be a solopreneur and that works for you and that's what you're aspiring to, great, no worries there. But if you want to scale beyond yourself, if you want really a business, not just your own job, then you must learn to scale beyond yourself. You know, the challenge is that many of us, including myself, we get to that point of starting our business by being the person that gets it all done. You're a taskmaster. You get it all done, even if you just have to put in more hours. But that approach, that mindset then becomes a bottleneck for us when we start a business, at least after that initial startup phase, because you cannot scale if you're the only one who knows how to do everything. I explore this more in episode 355 on delegation, where I talk about how to begin letting go, that mindset of shifting away from only I can do it best to understanding the value of teaching and developing systems so that others can do it well. And that is the only way to scale. You want to identify what your highest value activities are. What is it that you're best at and that you enjoy doing? Those things usually go hand in hand. And then begin enabling others, documenting, automating, outsourcing, so that you're not bogged down trying to do everything. If you do that, if you stay there, then you will not grow beyond perhaps yourself, and your business will not scale, and that can lead to the failure of your business. And reason number 5 why your small business will fail is lack of adaptability, refusing to quit or pivot when it's necessary. You're stubbornly sticking to a failing product or market or strategy or segment, or more importantly, a business model that simply won't produce consistent profits and doesn't allow you to scale. Now, this is hard. This is perhaps the hardest thing to do. We put a lot into developing an idea, a concept, bringing it to market, starting our business, and then to admit that it's not working. Well, that's hard on the ego. That's hard on our pride. And so often we dig in deeper. There's the whole sunken cost mentality. And so I'm not telling you this is easy. I really think that this is an area where you need to get help from a coach, an advisor, someone who's done it before. But if you stubbornly stick to it, your business will fail. Not every business idea is meant to survive in its current form. And it's not about giving up, which I think is the big thing that holds us back. It's about knowing when to pivot, when to adjust. I dove into this in episode 554. I titled that episode When to Quit, and it's based on a great book that I recommend on this subject by Seth Godin called The Dip. And in this episode, I explore those the emotional side of quitting or pivoting and how to perhaps make that decision with some level of confidence. Here's a great quote on this from Seth Godin from that book, The Dip, on this topic. Quote, "Winners quit fast, quit often, and quit without guilt until they commit to beating the right dip for the right reasons." End quote. Now that'll make a little bit more sense when you understand in either listening to the episode or reading the book about what he means by the dip. And when do we fight through? When do we keep fighting because we're almost there versus I'm fighting against a brick wall and what I need to do is pivot instead or make a roundabout or change path or I'm in a cul-de-sac, as he explains in The Dip. So make sure that you're building feedback loops, that you're aware of and listening to what the market is telling you, and not hang on with pride until death on a particular approach or a business model. You have to have the data that tells you that as much as possible. You have to have honest input, and you have to be honest with yourself about what's working and not working. And you have to be willing to adapt, or your small business will fail. So those are the 5 reasons your small business will fail. Number 1, no clear business model. Number 2, poor cash flow, probably based on unrealistic projections. Number 3, weak marketing and sales and a lack of focus on who it is that you're going after initially. Number 4, trying to do it all yourself and not delegating, not developing a team as your business grows. And number 5, a stubbornness and a failure to adapt or evolve or pivot your business when you find out or the market tells you that the business model is broken. So these are common mistakes, but they're completely avoidable to a big extent if we're just A, aware of them, and B, willing to put in the work, to do the work, to get the help perhaps to adjust and avoid these issues. So stay flexible, be honest with yourself, and ask for help. This is Henry Lopez, and thanks for joining me on this episode of The How of Business. I wish you the best as you start and grow your successful and profitable small business. I release new episodes every Monday morning, and you can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, including the How of Business YouTube channel and at my website, thehowofbusiness.com. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to The How of Business. For more information about our coaching programs, online courses, show notes pages, links, and other resources, please visit thehowofbusiness.com.